Hello everyone, so here we go. This is Bonsai Pot History number 2. We're getting into a very important figure in the world of bonsai, Count Matsudaira. This is his book, so his wife kind of made this in memory of him to show his collection and some of the trees that didn't die after he died. Um, he he had a very interesting life. He was actually pretty much royalty in some ways. He was the son of a daimyo, which is kind of like a they're right under the shogun, so they're almost like warlords of different regions. So this was before the um, Meiji Restoration happened. That his father would have been a daimyo, and his mother was actually the daughter of the head of the Tokugawa clan. And the Tokugawa clan was actually uh, the shogun. So they were kind of the rulers of all the clans. And they had more power, really, than the emperor. So his blood was mixed up in the high ups of the ruling class of Japan. And he was a political figure. I'm going to start opening the book, by the way, because I'm sure you don't want to see a blank page. So he was a political figure, and his book's really well made. He was a political figure who did a lot of philanthropic things and led the country even through World War II. So he died in 1944. He was born in 1874. So he kind of saw it all. He saw the upswing of Japan from post Meiji, which is when the whole country was kind of recreated, transferring from a feudal state into a modernized state. And he saw the rise of Japan and its military and its conquest, and then I'm sure I don't know if he saw the downfall quite yet, but he probably saw that it was coming. So he had quite a tumultuous life. But we'll talk more about the Count in a minute. But now let's get into the pots. So this is an antique Chinese. The shape is called a Shikoto shape. Let's see if I can get a good view on it. Good. So it's called a Shikoto shape. It has the cloud feet and the cut corners and that very characteristic kind of belled out sides. And I actually have one that I can show you. So this is, let me see. It's a little difficult. So here we are. So this is a Shikoto. And you could see his chop. And I have it upside down, of course. Don't want to drop this. So there's the chop. Cute little cloud feet. Very well built. So this is called shide, which is a purple clay. And it's most likely a Nakawatari. So that's a type of antique Chinese that came from the Meiji to the Taisho era. And so that would be around like 1868 to 1926. This is probably, we don't know for sure, but it's probably close to Taisho, maybe late Meiji. Still very old and antique, and quality build. You can see the divots on the side. Very well constructed, proportional, beautiful clay. It's a nice sheen to it. Almost like a black clay, but it still has that tinge of purple. Really beautiful. So the one in this book is a vermilion color. Also very nice. You can see his tree in there. Let's move on. That looks like an azalea. It's a lot of mochikomi, which is kind of like age in a pot with a lot of these trees. The structure isn't really there as much, but kind of like what you see in the modern day. You see a lot of big trunks and crazy branching. These are just old trees, really. So he also collected, let's get a look at these guys, a lot of Amari. So Amari ware is, it really was kind of the epicenter of where porcelain ware was created in Japan. They did ceramics for a very long time, but porcelain ware in particular wasn't really till the Edo period, which was kind of like the early 1600s. And it's because during that time they found something called kaolin, which is needed in order to produce, here, let me see if I can, in order to produce these porcelain pots. Kaolin actually, as a potter, we use it as well. We have a source called EPK, but kaolin is kind of like a stone. It's a Chinese word, kaoling, something along those lines. But it's like a stone that's needed to make a very distinct type of porcelain ware. And so that's in Arita, they started making these pots. And these are not that old, all the way back to the 1600s. These are probably more Meiji, around late Meiji. And when they have this kind of blue, indigo blue on a white background, like you're seeing here, that is called sometsuke. So sometsuke is probably the oldest type of Amari out there, but there's also multicolored Amari. In my opinion, I really like the sometsuke. Now the motifs are really important with the Amari. So on this one, let me see if I could get a better focus on that. The motif is, is a crane, which is, of course. There we go. So the crane is a symbol of longevity. In fables, they were said to have lived like 1,000 years. They're also considered like a holy creature. And the souls of people would go to heaven on their wings. Something along those lines. So it's a symbol of good luck and longevity. Now, the ocean waves, the tidal waves, churning tidal waves you see below, are symbols of the gods of the sea, and they're a symbol of strength. So together they create that really beautiful motif, and that's all hand painted. It's really quite amazingly done. The black pine is also a symbol of longevity. Let's go. There you go. You can see how well this is painted in the top. Almost like a wind. Yeah, it's a really cool one. So, let's get back to the book. So the Count also really enjoyed the Amari. final note on the Imari. So I was wondering how and why they made them this small, because it's pretty rare to see Imari in these kind of small size containers. And after doing some research, there's a festival. It's the Hina Doll Festival. It's called Hina Matsuri, and it takes place on March 3rd, where young girls dress in kimonos and get Hina dolls from their mothers. So during these festivals, I guess they also have accents alongside the Hina dolls, and they would have these Imari pots and put little flowers or things of the sort inside them. And now they've been repurposed for bonsai. So kind of interesting to see that their origin kind of goes back to a traditional festival. So moving on to, so that's a nice, looks like that could be a copper red reduction fired. This one right here by Takamoto. He seemed to have a lot of reduction wear. Let's put another one on there. Let's see if we can focus on that. He has a lot of reduction fired pots. And so moving on to Takamoto Masanori, so the vast amount of the Count Matsudaira's collection, a lot of it are Takamoto pots. So let's move on and kind of take a look at some of those and talk about Takamoto. See when we can find some good ones. So you can see some right here. And then some more Imari. So the Takamoto Masanori was born in 1848 and died in 1892. And his father served the Tokugawa shogun. And if you remember, okay, so the brother of the Tokugawa shogun led the Tokugawa clan and region. Now, the daughter of that Tokugawa clan leader was Count Matsudaira's mother. So hopefully I didn't lose you there, but you could kind of see how it's all intertwined, and how the Count had a lot of had sort of not a bond to Takamoto, but in a way they had a connection. So let's move on. Wow, a lot of Imari right there. Okay. And once again, more so Takamoto, he had to really live through the Meiji Restoration, which was probably a pretty crazy time, but exciting at the same time, because they were going from a really feudalistic, kind of stagnant state into a modernized state where the possibilities were endless, and they were bringing in, they were sending out people all around the world to figure out how to do really everything from making whiskey to you name it, and mechanization, and they brought it back to Japan and kind of made it in their own spirit. So it was a time of a lot of excitement, for sure. Ooh, there's a nice one. So there's another Takamoto. Looks like could be a crab apple of sorts. I have one a bit similar, as you can see. And so these are press molds, or not press molds, sorry. They're casting, slip casting. So there's a few different ways of utilizing molds. You could press clay into the molds. You could kind of drape slabs inside molds, or you could pour liquid clay into the mold. Takamoto used a more modernized technique, which was the cast mold technique, which I believe was borrowed from the West. And you could see really allowed him to make a splendid amount and an abundant amount of pots in his short life. You can see the patina on the bottom there. Very old pot. These are around 150 years old. Okay, moving on. I love that oval. There's some more. Some of the minis. Almost, it looks like most of these are Takamotos. A few of them might be Amari. But let me show some small examples. So as you can see, he used different clay bodies. He liked his dark clays, but he also used those lighter clay bodies. And they're extraordinarily tiny pots. And that's why he had such an influence on Mame and Shohin Bonsai. Because he just started that fascination for them. And for making small, tiny trees. Those are more Takamoto pots, so looks like almost all of those are Takamotos. And it appears to be a set. Now the Count also liked stands and other vases, and looks like he has tiny books there, and other antiques. So he really supported the whole economy around these kind of containers, and I believe Count Matsudaira was also at the first Kokafu where he displayed some of his Mame displays. And so he really set the ball rolling. Those are nice. Let's take a look at these. For the Mame / Shohin world. These are antique Chinese. And they're different from... Let's scoot that up just in case. They're very different. So this would also be Shide. It looks like most of these are, at least. There's some that look a little bit more vermilion. But they are built... Looks like they are all built very well, especially considering their size. The Chinese really had a great affinity for making ceramics in a long, long history. There's another Takamoto. Maybe another crab apple. Maples. Another oval. Little fruit dangling on there. Once again, a lot of that mochikomi kind of feel. Age in a pot. And there were other artists that the Count also liked to buy pots from. So for example, there was also, I saw some pots made by Eiso Wakamatsu. There we go. So these ones in the front, these front three, those are by Wakamatsu. And I'll put out some of the ones I have here. So very small pots, block carved mostly. So they're kind of clunky looking, very blocky, as you can see. But he made some outstanding glazes. I'll put that one up so you could take a look at that glaze. And he just never got as famous as some of the other potters like Tofukuji, because his pots were not very big and not usable for a lot of people. But for Mame collectors, they're really appreciated and revered. So that would be Wakamatsu, Eiso Wakamatsu, from the Kyoto region. Okay, moving on. Okay, we're getting towards the end here. So, as you can see, he had a vast collection, probably thousands of pots. What you're seeing is not his entire collection. So it's not his entire collection, but it's just a good taste to show you what he liked to collect. So hopefully that was informative and you were able to learn a thing or two about the Count and how he influenced Mame and Shohin Bonsai, especially considering his political power and let's put some of these guys down. Considering his political power and influence over the bonsai community, he was at the first Kokufu, I believe, and he showed his Mame bonsai display. But yeah, he's a fascinating figure, and his ties to feudal Japan are really interesting to think about, and his blood lineage to the Tokugawa clan, and it's just, yeah, it's really interesting to think about. It must have been an exciting time for him to live in, where he got to see Japan really progress so rapidly and industrialize and become this great power, defeating Russia in the early 1900s, which no one thought an Asian country would be able to do, defeat a Western power, and eventually face the U.S. in World War II. So it was, yeah, and of course that was really sad with the things that they did and the downfall, but it's, I guess it's a part of history now. And that's his wife. So she outlived him, as wives usually do, outlive their husbands. And she took care of his collection and his trees. So it's just really sweet to see that. There's some of his trees on the little benches outside his house, all the pots, really old, beautiful pots. But anyway, thank you guys again for watching. Hopefully you learned a thing or two about some of the pots I explained and pointed out. And I look forward to seeing you guys in the next video. Okay, bye everyone.